Welcome on the show. Now, the recently concluded Under-20 AFCON in Egypt is has brought up some questions about where we are as a developing talent in the Under-20 football scene. Now, a lot of people expected, maybe justifiably so, for the Flying Eagles to go ahead and win their very eighth title in the competition, but it didn't turn out that way. But they did still put in a performance worth dissecting and perhaps even being proud of. And I'm joined on the line by Agbalaka right now. Agbalaka, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, a lot has been said about how far this team could go before the tournament, and then when they when they concluded as the third best team in the competition, winning against Tunisia in a 4-0 drumming, certain ministers even said, you know what, it's better than nothing, which it is. Third should not be considered as nothing, but in football and sports in general, it's like a zero-sum game. We want the winner we want to be known for being winners. And on the continent, at every stage, whether it's in women's football, men's football, under-20s, under-17s, whether it's in World Cup, in AFCON, we just want to win. And we put a lot of pressure on our players, even though they are supposed to be at this age still learning, still developing at the top level, so that by the time they get into the Super Eagles, they will be used to the pressure of it. They will be used and more comfortable with the surroundings of playing for their nation. Was the expectations on the Flying Eagles before the tournament began over too big for them to cope with?
Actually, I feel it depends on how we see it. Personally, I felt like the expectation and the objective we had reduced the distance we went. So I had this discussion with a couple of colleagues, and I was like, how would we as a nation, we've been the most successful in the under-20 competition, we won the competition 7 times, then we are going into the competition with the objective to win World Cup ticket. How can that be the benchmark? So I understand that getting to the semi-final, you're sure of the World Cup ticket, but that shouldn't be the objective. Regardless of how you see it, whatever pressure you are giving the so-called young guys of the Nigerian football team is the same objective that the young guys of other football teams go through. So it's not as if the Nigerian team are the only team that are under 20 going into the competition. Every single nation coming into the competition are under 20. So they all have young stars. They all have the
But surely you must agree, Benga, that.
So let's stop making it.
But surely you must agree that nations like Mozambique do not expect the same level of performance from their teams, whether to win it or to qualify for the World Cup at that level. They do not have the same pedigree as us, so the expectations surely isn't as high.
So I'm saying it shouldn't be our excuse. We've won the competition 7 times. Why is our excuse being pressure? They should be used to pressure because it's the same pressure across board. That's what I'm trying to say. And I feel like if the objective was reach the final, it may not be to win. It could be to win it, but you may not win it at the end of the day. But the objective should have been to reach the final. But everybody from the coach to the NFF president, they were just waiting to get the World Cup ticket.
But will you agree? But would you agree, Benga, that the manner of drawing out the very best out of players from past, the kinds of coaching, the kinds of motivation used to elicit the best performances from players in the past teams, has evolved in a different manner? Players in football are more sensitive. A lot of times, managers of the pedigree of Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, they are criticized for taking too strong a hand in how they manage their squad, and that they have to temper the manner in which they manage, they coach, they motivate with more individual approach to tailor it to the needs, to the emotional stability or instability of certain players. Would you agree that players in the past could motivate themselves and could put up with the pressure better than players of now?
That's down to the players, right? You cannot stay here and project that a particular player may not function under pressure because you think the modern day age or the modern generations don't flourish under pressure. That's down to the players. I feel like, in fact, man management is not the problem we have with the Flying Eagles, because if you listen to some of the interviews from the players, they like the coach. They will say, "Oh, I'm happy for the opportunity, I'm happy for this, I'm happy for that." A lot of the players are actually talking ill of the coach. So man management is not the issue. I don't feel individual brilliance or individual intelligence is not still the issue. The issue we saw, despite the bronze we won in the under-20, is the fact that these players lack the rudiment of the game. Simple things as beating an offside trap, simple things as completing pass, simple things as knowing when to place a cross, a through ball, or a cutback. All those rudiments of the game lack in the system that we play. So man management and all those things weren't the issue we face. But we face basic coaching challenges.
But when it comes to under 20 players, they are young. And with youth comes inexperience. And a lot of these things you've mentioned aren't yet considered to be muscle memory, because players learn and learn and learn until they reach their prime. Players at their prime are considered to find it more difficult to learn anything more. So things like beating the offside trap, passing and completing intricate passing sequences might be something that we can let go of, because it's not a craft that these players should be expected to have perfected at this age.
So again, I talked about benchmark, and benchmark is relative to your category. In this same category, we saw the Gambian team under 20. In this same category, we saw the Senegalese team. Both teams got to the final. They were literally the best two teams of the competition. Are they not also under 20? Didn't they do the same thing we're talking about? So why are we giving the excuse to Nigeria as a national team? Every single team in the competition were under 20. My point is, the benchmark shouldn't be lesser just because they were young. They were not the only young team in the competition.
We've talked in the past about the development of our football, and as much as at the senior level we always clamor for homegrown managers, homegrown coaches. There's a section of the Nigerian viewership of Nigerian football that wants to see our players managed, coached in a formula, in a philosophy that is authentically Nigerian, if there is such a thing. But what you've just mentioned, what you've just talked about benchmarks, when I think about countries like Germany, Spain, Brazil, their under-20s teams are so far beyond the levels that we're playing in Nigeria and indeed in Africa. If we're looking to, and it always starts from the youth, because that's where we can make the most change and that's where we can instill a new philosophy. Should we be open to more foreign-based coaches taking over and instill the kinds of formulas, the kinds of philosophies that are thriving on the world stage? Because when you look at leagues like the Premier League, it continues to thrive because today a Spanish manager comes in and takes over Manchester City. Tomorrow, an Italian manager comes in and takes over Chelsea and instills the new formation that is taking over right now, which is a 3 at the back and 4 or 5 in midfield and 3 or 2 up front. So my point is, if we need to change and we continue to talk about how we need to evolve our standards, evolve our philosophy, get our players to play to a level that they can compete in World Cups competently against the likes of Spain, against the likes of Germany, Italy, Belgium, should we be now thinking about rather than having a Ledon Bosso in charge of the under-20s, should we be looking at foreign young coaches who are all looking for a place to ply their trade and can bring their alternative, their different perspective of football philosophy to improve our grassroots football in Nigeria?
So I think the clamor for home-based coaches is overflowed. It doesn't depend on whether you are indigenous or foreign. It depends on if you can do the job. A lot of examples. You mentioned the leagues. You can even mention national leagues. Look at the English Women's Football National League, the senior team. The head coach, Sarina Wigman, is a Dutch person. She's not even English. And still what they did, they won the war, they won their cup, and they've been successful over the years under her. She even won the best coach as the best female coach in the world. But that's not sacrosanct, because we've seen in Nigeria, we had a certain Donald Rock who was German, he was foreign. But would any Nigerian say they enjoyed the Nigerian football under him? No. We currently have Jose Pesero. He's Portuguese. He's not from Nigeria. But will any Nigerian say he has done well with Super Eagles? So I don't think it's down to either being foreign or being indigenous. It's down to, can you do the job? We have indigenous coaches that have the potential. Are they trained? Are they well informed, well equipped for the position? Like also, if it's not the right one for the job, we can get somebody else. But it doesn't have to be either foreign or indigenous. It has to be who does the job. That's what matters mostly. And for the Nigerian football national team, we saw it as the AFCON, for example. We lost the first game to Egypt, right? The Egyptian team, I don't think they played the way they played because of whether their coach was indigenous or foreign.
So you
mean 3 games back to back.
Okay, go on. Sorry, go on.
English the Egyptian under-20 national team. I don't think the way they played was because of their coach. The Gambians, the Senegalese that got the final. Do you know that the Senegalese won the cup without conceding a single goal throughout the competition? Was that down to the fact that their coach was indigenous or foreign? I think that we overflowed this indigenous or foreign because we want to see more of our own. But the question is, can our own do the job? If they can, then give them the job.
I certainly agree with you, but it does seem to me like when we talk about the best of the best of the best aren't coaching in Africa. The very best of the best trained, most thoughtful, most creative managers and head coaches aren't plying their trade in Africa, and they certainly aren't getting their training in Africa. That said, they are so.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. They are not getting the training in Africa. So an African coach or a Nigerian coach can go and get training in Europe and be European certified as the UEFA B license to coach. So it's not about where you come from. It's about it's about your qualification. So yeah, an African coach can be coaching in Europe and have the Europe standard. How about that?
All right. Do you think that the current administration is interested in building a system team? And by that, I mean, when you look at clubs like Man City, Pep Guardiola establishes a system that uses positional play. And therefore, the kinds of players he brings in must be technically proficient and capable of learning his style, his system of play to thrive. They might be good as individuals, but he wants to turn them into a collective. The philosophy he has established at the club now will transcend his administration, his oversight of the first team, because whoever they bring in next, even if he is not as good, will be expected to play within the same framework. It has happened with Barcelona for years, and you can see that no matter what manager they bring in, there is a form of possession football that thrives. It might not be at the peak of the tiki-taka that we remember back in the day in 2008, 2009, but it's still a version of it. Do you think the administration, the NFF administration in Nigeria is trying to establish much the same thing for our national teams?
So, I don't know, maybe you would correct me. Is the identity of the team or the system of the team, is it down to the federation of the country or to the coaching crew?
Yeah, but who they hire?
An identity.
But you understand that when the person making the decision about what kinds of coaches they're going to hire, they're the ones who decide what kind of system they are looking for. If they want a counter-attacking style of football, then they're going to go out and look for a manager who is proficient at building a squad that knows how to counter-attack effectively. If it's possession or positional, the same thing. If it's gang pressing, you're looking for potentially a German manager. My point is, are our administrators in Nigeria looking at a systems manager, or do they only care about a manager who can win games right now and leave nothing built for the next eventual administration, eventual coaching staff to take over from?
So that makes sense actually about what you identify when you want to coach. But look at it. We have the under 17, we have the under 20, we have the under 23, and we have the senior national team. These are 4 different categories. Now, if you are going to be playing attacking football, are you going to be playing attacking football from under 17? So those players can grow through the continuity in all the age grade groups. Because if, off the top of my head, from what we watch in the games, the average or the standard identification that we can make to the Nigerian national team is physicality and playing through the flanks. So we have more wingers that run through the flanks, try to cut in or try to play an in-swinger and blah, blah, blah. So do we have that in the under 17? Do we have that in the under 20? Can they now transfer to the under 23? The amateurs that we praised today, they won the under 20 back in the day under Manu Garuba. The Victor Osimhen that we are praising today, he won the under 17 as well. So they actually did those things at their time, but was it translated to the national team? There was a time the national team was striving on wingers. If you watch the Super Eagles now, Jose Cosero plays a 3-5-2 formation. So actually that formation removes every form of wingers and plays out and out strikers and supporting strikers. So the formation that the coach brings in also matters, irrespective of whether you are employing an attacking-minded coach or you're employing a tiki-taka coach. The point is, does it transcend from the under 17 up until the senior level? That is what should matter. And
in that regard, it sounds to me, and most clubs do this now, most clubs that believe in a systems manager, most clubs that thrive on building and developing players from the academy onward into the first team, there needs to be more collaboration and cooperation in terms of strategy, tactics, and philosophy from the Super Eagles all the way down to the under 17s. And perhaps then we can build a legacy of one single unifying philosophy for the rest of the teams. Meanwhile, the recently concluded under 20 AFCON has, even though we didn't win it, it has brought about something for the Flying Eagles, as defenders Augustine, Njoku, and Solomom Agbalaka have been named among the best 11. Njoku and Agbalaka took much of the spotlight with brilliant defensive displays, with his man of the match performances against Egypt and Mozambique. Agbalaka scored the match winner for Nigeria against hosts Egypt to help their Flying Eagles record their first win at the tournament, and also followed it up with another commanding display in Nigeria's 2-0 win over Mozambique in their last group game. Now, this Flying Eagles also got awarded the Fair Play Award for their performance in the competition. So, if the team has gotten a bronze medal, been considered the fair play team of the tournament, and has 2 of its players in the best 11 squad, was this a good tournament? Quickly.
So, to whom much is given, much is expected, and also vice versa. To whom less is given, less is expected. During in the build-up to the AFCON, we saw how Ladam also chose his team. We saw how we let go of a lot of European-based players that came. In fact, there was this headline that about 30 players that came to the camp were sent back. So right from time, we knew that he understood the kind of players he wanted to feature and the level of players that fit his requirement.
right,
The
thank you.
competition has shown that they won bronze. Are they strong enough to win the World Cup? I don't think they're there yet.
All right. Thank you so much, Big. It's been a pleasure having you on board.